What is up, true believers? The eternal truth. The eternal truth. The eternal truth. The eternal truth behind our modern mythology.
What is up, true believers? It's Mason here with Comics and Crosses, where, yes, we discuss the eternal truths behind our modern mythology. And today is Wednesday, March 9th, and new comic book day. So I hope that your pull is plentiful today, and that there are no delays from Diamond, or anybody else for that matter, Lunar, or whoever else the heck. Yeah, it's been a good week. A little cold weather where I'm at here in Fort Worth, but I'll survive. And so today I have something pretty special. I got a special guest who I'm going to bring on in just a minute, and he is somebody you may know if you've been around the community for longer than a minute. He is the Bearded Comic Bro. Is going to be joining us. I reached out to him when Batman came out because I think him and I and everybody else in the community were pumped and just excited to talk about it. So he's been cool enough to give us some time to come on, just have a cool discussion. And one thing that I really like to do with the show here is just introduce you to more people around the comic book community. Because if you are maybe new or don't know, there's a lot of really awesome people doing cool stuff, sharing their perspectives and their takes on stuff and what they enjoy. So there's a lot of fun to be had, and Bearded is definitely a part of a lot of that fun. So, only thing I wanted to mention today is just kind of my comics that I'm excited about, kind of my top maybe 3 or 4 that are coming out today. So, as far as I know, at least according to League of Comics, which is hit or miss in their accuracy, but I'm excited about Apache Delivery Service from Dark Horse is issue number 3 is coming out today. That's been a cool kind of moody, interesting tale that kind of hits in an interesting way, having to do with kind of people's perception of one another and war and all kinds of things. So that's been a cool one so far. Joker from DC, the Joker has been consistently a great title. Really loving that one. Issue number 13 comes out today. Also from Dark Horse, Last Flight Out, issue number 5 is coming out. That's been a cool one that I could definitely see being made into a movie. And then We Live. We Live is back. We Live, Age of Palladians. I think that's what it is. Number 1 comes out from Aftershock. Aftershock, always quality, and that's definitely one of their top titles. So anyway, those are books that I'm excited about. And let me know. Let me know what you're excited about in the comments. I'd love to hear what you guys are looking forward to. And so now, without further ado, just for some conversation, talk about the Batman, talk about his channel, talk about life. I have a friend to bring up. This is the Bearded Comic Bro, who has his own YouTube channel. Look him up. He's on Lamer Frame with Rod the Rican. He does a great many things. I'll just have him tell you about it. But what's up, and welcome to the show, Bearded.
What is going on, Mason? Man, thank you for having me, dude. It's a blast. And y'all, if you hear water in the background, it's not peeing or anything. It's literally the sub pump. I'm in the basement, so I just wanted to put that out there right now because I can hear it good.
But now I'm gonna believe that it's peeing no matter what you say, because
I know, right? Now you don't know. Now I'm safe no matter what.
Yeah. And where do you live, Bearded? I forget where you're at.
So I'm in Columbus, Ohio. So when you were like, "Oh, it's a little cold here in Texas," I was like, "Shut up, man! Like, nah, like you don't even know." We're in Ohio where we're wearing flip flops one day, and then the next day it's snowing, and it's like it can't make up its mind.
Yeah, this has been my first winter in Texas. So the reason I probably say this is because I'm originally from California, so I'm even more spoiled with perfect weather. So I'm out here, and I'm like, wow, and I've come to realize that Texas is kind of like, at least Dallas-Fort Worth is kind of like the wimp of the Midwest. There's Southern, but So yeah,
Right.
don't no prayers for me. I'll be all right. Um,
You'll survive.
yeah, yeah. And so, Bearded Man, it's really cool to have you on. We've kind of crossed paths here and there, and you helped me get some
Yeah.
books at one point. But why don't you just for the sake of anybody who maybe doesn't know you, I'd love to hear about what you have online and what people can check out from you.
Yeah, man. Pretty simple. I do 3 videos usually a week. Depends on just life and if everything's going on. But typically my schedule is Mondays I drop a creator interview. So it could be anywhere from a Kickstarter to an indie publisher book to a Marvel DC. Just trying to get different voices and hearing different perspectives on comics and how they create comics and stuff like that. Every Friday night I do a game show with my wife called Name That Character, where we kind of go back and forth, just quizzing each other. And it's been a lot of fun to just do this channel with my wife and get to have her on because she's not in the comics, but she's comics adjacent now. Like, so she kind of is
Good way
like,
to put
hey,
it.
she understands that we were walking in the shop the other day, one of our days off, and we were just looking at books, and she looked at me, she goes, I hate that I know this book is a key book. I was like, well, my job is done then. Then my job is done. So we do that. And then on Wednesdays, it's just a wild card for me. It's whatever I feel like putting out. Um, so it could be me talking about Batman villains. It could be me talking about Batman key books, a lot of Batman stuff because I love Batman.
Yeah.
I also, do other shows with my wife where she reads a comic book for the first time. So we'll just give her an issue number one of a series that people, on my channel suggest and like have her read this. She'll read it and give a review. And, it's really fun to see that perspective from someone who doesn't read or like comics anyways.
Right. Yeah.
And it's just to get that. And we do a comic themed cooking show, every couple months, and where we take recipes that we found from comic books or things like that. Basically, it's just anything that I would enjoy watching, I try to create.
Mhm.
So it's random. Like comic book YouTube is already a niche, like, it's a really small market, and then I just make my market even smaller by doing a ridiculous comic book themed stuff. That I'm like, let's do a cooking show about comics and cooking, like let's do that and
Yeah.
stuff. So
Yeah.
it's just random things, but it's a lot of fun, and I've been able to rope my wife into kind of helping out with that a lot. So it's been
That's
a fun journey.
Yeah, I feel that. I mean, I certainly have taken comic book niche and made it, well, in one way made it, I made what I talk about the way I talk is kind of specific, but,
Right.
I've been doing my thing for a little bit and, I'm comics and crosses, but I cover a wide variety of things. And to make it even wider, I started doing a morning show so that I could just kind of talk about whatever I'm thinking about. And I got to say too, it's really fun and entertaining watching your wife explore the world of comics as an obvious outsider. At least
Right.
initially. Now she's getting more, more knowledgeable and everything. But I mean, it reminds me of my wife, who I've talked into a thing or there here or there. She actually now enjoys going to cons, which is a great thing.
Dude, that's the best thing ever because we were going to Comic Cons before I started this channel, and we just had a blast because she's like, hey, listen, I can go meet celebrities as long as you give me ice cream and I get to meet a celebrity, like we can go to Comic Cons, like I'm good with that. And so like that kind of started, and I
Yeah.
mean she's the reason I started the channel. It's her fault, so I can't blame.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. My wife was very encouraging as well. And but the
Hmm.
thing is with cons, you might be meeting like the guy who played a robot on the early canceled, show of whatever. It's you
Yep.
get some deep reach backs to, odd celebrities at these cons sometimes.
Well, and that's why we prep, we game plan for it. We'll see like what celebrities are gonna be there, and I'll be like, okay, let's watch this movie so there's some familiarity, or we will like we've gotten to see characters from The Office, which is our TV show,
Oh, that's cool.
and jam like that, or like Mark Paul Glosser, Zach from Saved by the Bell, like it. So like we've been able to get somewhere. I'm like, oh, you want to go get your picture taken with Jason Momoa? She's like, okay, let's do it.
Yeah, that'd be a quick sell from my wife as well.
Right.
But yeah, I remember going with my buddy, and he got to meet. I think it's Ernie Hudson who played Winston in
Yes.
Ghostbusters, and he was Ghostbusters is his jam. So it was like it was like meeting the Pope for some people, you know. So
Mm,
that was pretty cool. I haven't gotten to meet a lot of celebrities, but you know, but it used to be cool at the big cons and the big rooms, seeing all them promoting the movies and stuff like that. But speaking of movies, so we started talking. We wanted to talk about the Batman, and I know you're a big Batman fan. So I mean, I know that you like the movie, right?
yeah. More than liked, I would say.
You love. So, okay, so would you say it is the best Batman movie thus far? Where do you stand on that?
See, I can't. I don't know if I can make that prediction or statement yet. Just
Yeah.
from the I've watched enough movies, and I know how I am that I get super excited easily,
Hmm.
and I get super hyped up easily. So I have to for me to say like it's the best Batman movie ever, like to knock out The Dark Knight or Mask of the Phantasm, you know, which
Yeah.
have been up there for so long. It's hard for me to throw that up there right away. I mean, I've seen the Batman twice already. I saw it opening night, and then I went back a day later to go see it. So, because I wanted to soak it all in, because I was
Yeah.
just a giddy little kid the first time go.
Yeah.
So, but I have to give myself a chance to let it breathe before I like can say like it's the best. It's up there as a top for sure for
Yeah.
me. But I don't know if I can put it where it knocks out some that have sat there for so long, because I got to look at it and really rewatch all of them, and
Yeah.
man, I can't. It's tough.
It is tough. I mean, especially if you love the character like we do, I'm sure.
Right.
And I'll put this in the description, but spoiler warning. You know, we're going to talk about the movie. We've seen it. We're hoping that people have seen it by now, so we may say throw some things out there that are pretty in depth to the story and what happens. So, I came into it. Feeling kind of standoffish a little bit. I was not super pumped, you know. I mean, I thought I was like, okay, cool, this is exciting, it's gonna be good, but I really didn't like the first trailer when it came out. I kind of warmed up to it. In the next trailer, when they kind of showed more action, I'm like, okay, this looks like it could be pretty dope. But I still didn't know. There was so much I didn't know, and I through the whole movie, I felt kind of off balance, you know, because it is a different take. It surprised me. I felt like it surprised me, and I was surprised that well into the movie I'm like, I don't know what's happening next, you know. And that was different for a Batman thing. It was like, you know, I felt very different to me. Did you feel that way? Did you feel like it was surprising, or did you feel what do you think?
I don't know if I would say surprising for me. But I get what you're saying about it. It's such a tonal different style movie.
Mhm.
Like the tone of the movie is so different than really what we've seen with, Batman, the Tim Burton, the 89 and Returns. Definitely different than Schumacher's Batman's. Um, and even Batflick, or, everyone's going to compare it to Nolan more, but again, that's completely different tone than Nolan's. Like they're both probably the most grounded in reality of the movies, of the Batman movies, like this one and Nolan's, but they're definitely a different vibe. So I remember sitting like, that first 5 minutes of the Riddler creeping in and it's like, okay, it has a feel that it takes you a moment to get into it, of like, okay, I have to prep myself mentally of like, this is a different style and of a movie. And if you can't do that, I think that's where people probably got it'll probably set you off right at the beginning of like, I don't know if I like this. And if you can't adjust into the tone that they're trying to set, I think you're gonna be the whole movie, you're gonna be like, this isn't for me. So
Yeah.
because I think you have to embrace that, because it's such a different tone than we've ever experienced, I think, with a Batman movie.
Yeah, and what I didn't, you know, it wasn't like a this isn't for me thing for me, but
Yeah.
it was definitely noticeable the difference in tone. And the thing that I realize is I feel like it is so Nolan set Batman in the real world, whereas this movie is realistic, is what I feel like.
Mhm.
Because even now, the seeing this, like I feel like the Bale Batman it was still like he was a blockbuster hero. Like he was
Right.
still, you know, like it felt larger than life. And in this movie, I feel like Batman rarely left the ground. Like it was very grounded. I mean, it was very like, I'm like, wow, like this, it kind of rode that line of almost like this is a dude in a suit, because you kind of like needed to see people seeing him that way, but
Right.
it was a very fine line it walked, but I felt like it pulled it off.
Yeah. Yeah, it was that aspect of you're looking at, like you said, you did it really, like you're right. Of no one's put it in the real world. This just kind of grounds it more into like this felt real. This felt like if there was an actual vigilante in our world in today's society, that this is kind of how he would be treated. He would have the cops like looking at him weird. In all the Batman movies before, we've had the bat signal on top of GCPD. It's not there. It's in a separate place because it's Gordon's special little, because
Yeah.
it's Gordon and Batman have that relationship. And I think it really is one of those of like, it didn't feel like a blockbuster movie. It
Yeah.
felt like an art house movie more.
It
And
did. Yeah.
that's where I think that's the tone. It was a superhero art house movie. And I mean, you could take out the superhero elements and it's a film noir. It's with the narration. You take out Batman and put a detective in a trench coat and a hat, and you can make it be a, film noir movie.
Yeah, it was like a seven, or even Zodiac more, like a
Right.
feel of like a Zodiac, and it was dark, and it was eerie, and then the pacing was kind of slow, but not, I mean, not slow, but it was slower than you'd be used to for a superhero movie, I felt like. And so in that way, it really felt like a detective thing of trying to follow the clues, of trying to like solve this case, where it's kind of like in those movies where you feel bad for the cops, the detectives, because they're drinking coffee and smoking all the time. It's like, God, when are they gonna like catch a big break? Like that's how I felt for Batman. Like, oh, you better catch this guy. This is getting heavy.
Right.
So do you think? Let's see. Did you have, what were problems that you had with it? Were there any problems you had with the movie?
You know, I'm trying to think, and I don't know if there were anything that stood out to me initially as like I would really change this. Like, I'm trying to go back to what I'm trying to think of people's complaints about the movie. Like, it's 3 hours, and I'm like, nah, I'm okay with that. If I'm spending
Yeah.
16-20 bucks to watch a movie and the director has a story he wants to tell, like, I'm okay with that. Like, why do I want to pay the same amount of price for an hour and a half less? Like, no, like, give it to me.
Yeah, it's not
Uh,
just the Lord of the Rings nerds that get that,
right,
guys. Like we should have, I want the 4 hour version that he made, the first cut of it.
right. So I really don't know. Again, it's something I'm gonna have to sit back. There wasn't anything that jumped out glaring to me because like the moments that felt slow or maybe a little dragged out for people, I appreciated because I felt like it gave me time to allow the story to breathe a little bit more
Yeah.
and appreciate what they were trying to do with it. I feel like we're so conditioned nowadays with superhero movies to be like boom, 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 action, 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 right? Like, and it's always so quick that like Matt Reeves just kind of took a seat back and like, hey, I'm gonna give you some action. I'm gonna because like
Yeah.
the fight scenes were brutal and they were
Yeah.
intense and like, but he also is like, but I'm gonna make this a detective story. So jumping off, maybe as we talk, there might be stuff that pops up where I'm like, I wouldn't have done that, but I was really digging the vibe and the vision that Matt Reeves had for the movie. So
Yeah.
what about you? Like, was there glaring things that, because I know that there were issues, people had issues with it. So,
I want to say that I didn't find, I think the hardest thing for me to stomach in the movie was Batman being so visible in front of like a lot of like the cops mainly, him being involved in the case, and seeing that was something that maybe I've seen in the animated series, but it was hard to see in live action, because I'm thinking, like he's just like standing around in the open a lot. Like it felt like for me, because I'm used to him being in the shadows, kind of maybe working with Gordon, but not so much the rest of the police department. And so that was a little weird, and also because one of the things that I didn't like about the trailer when I first saw it was I didn't like his suit so much. It kind of grew on me in the movie, but I saw him and I thought those are some big clunky boots. I don't see him running away very well or very fast. And like like I guess it was meant to be really tactical, but for me,
Right.
it's grown on me. But I had a hard time with his look. I thought he looks like a dude in a suit, and I don't know how much of that is intentional and how much of that is they didn't really pull off the look right.
Yeah, the suit also I get it. Because I remember seeing at the beginning, because he has that kind of like it's that vampire cape
Yeah,
almost, which is weird to say that with it, like because everyone's like talking about vampires, like oh sparkly vampires, but
yeah,
like
old school
because it has that
football collar kind of thing.
right
Yeah,
the collar that pops up. Uh, but I think as like you said, as I watched the movie, I appreciate it because it felt very much like everything about that suit was very tactical.
mm,
And and obviously it's a body armored suit, and it was a quick, because everywhere he goes as Bruce Wayne, not everywhere, but like if he's about to do some stuff, he has a suit on and then he has a jacket over it. I mean, he looks like the Marshmallow Man at some scenes in the movie because he's just so
yeah,
bulky because the suit's underneath his coat and he just carries his cowl in a backpack. And so it took a little bit to get used to, but being that it was a body armor suit that could take bullets. We said, and might be a little spoiler, but and we talked about it, so if you don't want spoilers, I'm just telling you. But there was a scene towards the end of the movie where he has to shoot himself up with adrenaline or
mm,
venom, whatever people are trying to guess what it
yeah,
is, who knows? But he pops off a spot in his suit that he has to open up this special spot that he can stab the needle through to give him that jolt of adrenaline. That showed me like that moment right there. I'm like, that's a tactical aspect, right?
yeah.
Like if he and it was that attention to detail for me, I started to appreciate the suit more because it felt like every single aspect of the suit was needed, with his gauntlet, whatever his gloves were that weren't gloves, but how the batarang, basically the grappling gun came out of his wrist, almost like Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And everything was tactical. And to say like, okay, he needs the adrenaline, he's not just going to find a weak spot in his armor. He actually has to open up a spot that he had already developed there to stab the needle through. So I was like, those moments, I think then putting it all together made me appreciate the suit even more because it felt very intentional.
Yeah, that's well said. I think that I really did like the grappling gun things loaded on his arms, which made a lot of sense because whenever I would watch Batman the Animated Series, I'd see him pull out this big clunky thing and fire it, and I'm like, that is too big to carry on that belt. I mean, what can maybe one.
Where do you get that? And how do
Yeah,
you reload? Come on, come on.
yeah. I'm like, this is a bunch of malarkey. So, yeah, so it was cool to see a system, a kind of a system that worked. Although, now that I think about it with his suit, um, I felt like in Nolan's movies, the cape made sense. He explained the cape. But in this, I'm kind of like, why is he wearing a cape if he's so tactical? Like, because he doesn't really use it in the movie to shield himself, to hide that we can tell. Like, I can't remember a scene where he's kind of, covering up or anything like that. So it was, so that kind of, I felt like was an overlook, or maybe there could have been something to speak to it. Because even when he
Yeah, and
flies, he doesn't use it.
right, no, because he uses the squirrel suit, the
Yeah,
flying squirrel suit,
becomes
which
Squirrel
was sweet.
Batman.
Right. And I haven't thought of that aspect of that. And my only initial thought, just thinking right off the top of my head is it probably is it's looking for that design of, I want something to, first off, you can't have Batman without a cape. Like
No.
there's just, there'd be an uproar.
Mhm.
And so I would say it's almost for the aesthetic of, I'm trying to strike fear in the shadows. And so maybe to help that, it would have been better that if some point in the movie he used it almost as like a way to kind of hide in the shadows
Mhm.
behind his cape. Because yeah, you're right. Like it kind of feels like, well, why does he have a cape? We haven't seen the use of that.
Mhm. I guess at some points he did come out of the shadows, but it just wasn't. I felt like that wasn't didn't come across super well.
Yeah.
Um, but so what did you think? I mean, about the whole idea of vengeance and kind of becoming an inspiration. By the end of it, he kind of realized he needed to upgrade or evolve his purpose from a sense of vengeance to a sense of inspiration and hope, to kind of lead
Yeah.
people. What's your take on that? Did that land for you? Did you feel it was good or what?
So it landed for me for now.
Mm,
And what I say is they have to do something with it now in the second movie. If
yeah.
they don't do if they don't do growth of Bruce Wayne's character and Batman's character in the second movie, I'll have to go back and be like, that whole change didn't stick for me. So right now it's I'm like, yes, I'm on board, but they have to do something with it. And I think they will. I mean, I'm not, but I'm putting that caveat out there. So if like in 5 years they don't,
Mhm.
and people come back, you said it was a great movie, and then
Yeah.
I'm, I got to protect myself on YouTube now. No,
Yeah.
but the idea of vengeance, right? Like, and I know people's biggest issues with the movie were Bruce Wayne. He's a whiny goth emo kid, and he, spoiled brat. He's kind of mopey, and he's not the billionaire playboy that we know. And I'm okay with that because it was very much the Batman Earth One book, where it's taking this kind of they say he's in his second year of Batman, but it's still trying to figure out who he is. He's trying
Mm,
to figure out what he said right off the bat, I'm vengeance. And it's very intentional. I think that he said that when he was beating up those thugs at the very beginning of the movie. And they go, "Who are you?" He goes, "I'm Vengeance." He doesn't say I'm Batman. Almost nobody calls him Batman in the movie. The Penguin calls him Vengeance. Catwoman calls him Vengeance. The Riddler thugs call him Vengeance. Riddler, I think, even calls him Vengeance. So I think it's very intentional of saying, because then what you saw was the Riddler's character is saying, you inspired me to take vengeance on the corrupt society that is out there
mm,
now. And he's basically saying, like, we're doing it the same way, and you and I are a pair. And I think what that is setting up for Batman to understand is vengeance in and of itself is not going to make a difference in the world, because if everyone's writing if everyone's taking vengeance on someone who's wronged them, well, you're always, we're all gonna, what's that saying, like, an eye for an eye, right? Or the world's gonna end up blind. And I think for Batman to have to realize that, and I think Bruce Wayne as well, because it's been so enthralled into who he is as a person, of vengeance of his family. There's a scene with Bella Real, the mayor, at a funeral, where she's walking with Bruce Wayne, and she's like, you can do more. And I think that's where we're going to see this symbol. That's where I would hope in the next movie we're going to start to see that transition of, I think Batman and Bruce Wayne are going to figure out that he needs to be more than vengeance, and he needs to be a symbol of hope for people as Batman, and also as Bruce Wayne, of doing what he needs to do,
yeah.
of helping the community, helping the city, helping take that shift of, it's, what can I do to inspire people as Batman, and then also as Bruce Wayne. So I really liked how it was so heavy on vengeance, so that it was like that realization at the end, and how they're having him, he could have just very easily, saved the day and left.
Mm,
And it was very, felt not Batman to me almost for a second, where he's like,
yes.
almost like a going to go to the place and help rescue people, and help them to understand, like find their way out. Like that's what, the first aid, the medics of, all the, whatever you want, the Coast Guard, that's what they do. Batman saves the day and leaves, and then everyone else cleans up after him. And Batman's like,
Yeah.
nah, I'm gonna help this out. And so that was a little jarring at first for me. I'm like, that's not that,
Yeah.
Batman doesn't do that. Batman dips out real quick. He saves the day and dips.
Yeah,
Like, let's
that
go.
bothered me. I had forgotten about that, but that was the main thing probably that bothered me, was at the end seeing Batman on the news, and like, now like, oh, vigilante Batman like helps. I was like, wow, like that's when that how it bothered me a little before, that the cops were seeing him a bunch. Now the whole world is seeing him, and it's just out there like he is the Batman. Like that felt very not Batman to me, So I don't know about that. It'll be interesting to see where they take it, and I hope that it can still be true to Bruce Wayne and Batman and who he is. I think that, yeah, it was an interesting take on Batman and the way Robert Pattinson played Bruce. It's and to back up, I think one big thing that influences all of this in the movie is it's not a there's like it starts without exposition, without explanation. I mean, there's a little bit of his voiceover, but
Right.
which made it a really good film. I think films that can do that are great, but you have to pay attention more. You have to kind of just go along for the ride, and this is a go along for the ride type thing, like Mad Max Fury Road or something where it just goes, and you're just like, okay, this is what's
Here we
happening
go.
now.
Giddy up.
And you're a little familiar because it's Batman, but at the same time so we didn't get like that was one thing that was hard for me was not getting like these kind of really definitive moments. Maybe there were some later in the movie, but it was hard to really know where he stood, what he was really strongly about, other than he says he's vengeance. But in that way, there was a lot of subtle things that really built and that idea of I talked about this in my spoilery review on Monday, but the perception of virtue, and him perceiving his vengeance as virtuous, and but then coming across the Riddler who perceived his vengeance as virtuous, and seeing the parallels there, them both being orphans, they're being having journals of what they're doing, feeling like they're saving Gotham, and it was so I think that divergence to inspiration and to hope needed to happen in order, like he needed to have strong definition that he was not the same as the Riddler, that he was not, one of these violent, destructive people, and of course he doesn't kill, but it was really important, and it's the principle of the wrath of man cannot produce the righteousness of God, and while he perceived himself as virtuous in the beginning, it was cool to see that transition take place, and I think this was one of the most poetic and right up there with The Dark Knight as profound kind of really stories that's been told in Batman.
Well, you're so right on that because the idea of, Batman has always been defined by, well, I don't kill.
Mm.
Like that separates me from those. But there's and even in the movie, there's a moment where Catwoman's dealing with, her own pain and her own suffering of what's gone on in her life of, seeing her mother killed, and knowing her best friend dying, and then, knowing the person who does it and is like, I've got to take my vengeance on it. And, I'm going to kill this guy. And Batman kind of grabs her at one point and I'm going to butcher it, but he basically says, he's like, you don't need this pain.
Hmm.
You've already dealt with enough pain in your life. You don't need this pain of what you're gonna go through if you take the leap to kill somebody. If you're gonna put that on, and it's that idea of, you know, where, almost with forgiveness, like you gotta be able to forgive yourself. It's not, you don't forgive so you let the other person off the hook. You gotta do it for you,
Yeah.
for your own self. And I think that's like, it was like Batman's like, you're being a little, a little deep there, a little poetic, of like,
Yeah.
this is, you've already dealt with pain, and this isn't going to comfort your pain. It's going to add to your pain, whether you think so or not.
Hmm. Yeah, that was good. I mean, and I was happy for it because, like I was saying, Robert Pattinson, this Batman is played so reserved, so guarded that that you want more to understand who he is, and that was one kind of challenge. Was I walked away feeling like I didn't fully know this Bruce Wayne, and I'm sure they'll develop him more in the future, but on the other side of that coin, I felt like he played it very well because somebody who's as traumatized and as obsessive as he is would be as reserved and quiet and introverted as he was played in this movie. So which I thought that was kind of great in a way.
Yeah, and they set that up very well in the beginning of the movie when he's doing the narration as he's talking. He's saying like how he stays up so much at night that he has become a nocturnal animal.
Mm.
You see that of he's going to be paler. He's not gonna, he's not getting sun. He's not getting that vitamin C he needs.
Yeah.
Like, let's be honest, he is staying in. If he's awake during the day, he's in the cave doing research. And they set that up by, Alfred's like, hey, we have, the investors are here, and he's like, why are they here? He's like, because you're not gonna go there. I got to bring them here. Like, you've got to figure this stuff out. And so, like, it really does set that stage up of that Bruce Wayne he doesn't care about Bruce Wayne at all.
Yeah.
Bruce Wayne is Batman. Like that we've always, I think we always see Bruce Wayne and Batman as two separate people because they're so diverse characters in movies, right?
Hmm.
Whether it's George Clooney, Val Kilmer, Michael Keaton, they all portray Batman, or even Christian Bale, Bruce Wayne in as a different way, and Batman as a different way. This felt like Bruce Wayne was Batman. He just put on his suit. His suit was his, that's Batman. Like they weren't two separate characters really, because I don't think he's gotten to the stage where he needs to have this Bruce Wayne, because Bruce Wayne is always his second identity, right?
Yeah.
You've got the Playboy billionaire is Bruce Wayne's, like, that's not, you have like, there's like three identities. There's Batman, there's like Bruce Wayne, the Playboy billionaire Bruce Wayne, and then there's like the real Bruce. But it's for him, I think in this one, you don't see that because Bruce is Batman through and through, and we don't get a lot of him outside of Batman because of that. This was the most Batman we see in a Batman movie in a long time. Like, you
Yeah.
know, Nolan's Batman's, he's in it less than a lot of the villains, and lot less than Bruce Wayne, which was completely flipped here.
Yeah, yeah. So that was different, and this was definitely, and I mean, I think because there was less given, like it made more valuable kind of everything he said, or the peeks you got to see into who he was, like because some of the scenes where he's solving riddles on a dime, and you're seeing how intelligent Bruce is. And how
Mm-hmm.
perceptive he is, his ability is he's walking around scanning the scene. You're like, okay, this is Batman the detective, the world's greatest detective. And it was cool to see that, to really see that come out. Like it was like, yes, you feel that he was the smartest one in the room, and that was cool. That was really cool for me. Um,
Yeah, because we haven't seen that. We haven't seen that in a movie. We
right.
haven't gotten the detective aspect. The most we've gotten was like in Dark Knight, where
Yeah.
they rebuild the bullet,
Yeah.
to kind of see that. Like they always like throw in like one little like scene of like, oh
Hmm.
yeah, hey, he's a detective. Where this was like, no, we're straight up. This is a detective movie. He's the world's greatest detective. We're gonna show you why.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, and so, Bearded, is Batman your favorite character?
Yeah, I mean, it's up there with Dick Tracy,
Oh, that's
but
right. You're a big Dick Tracy fan.
I'm a
Yeah.
big Dick Tracy fan because that was what I grew up. Batman and Dick Tracy were the two superhero comic book icons that I grew up with. So if I wasn't reading Batman books, I was reading Dick Tracy comic books or the comic strips and things like that. But I think if I had to pick one overall, as I've grown up, it's been Batman, just because there's been more for me to consume. Dick Tracy is kind of like you can only consume so much, and
Yeah.
we haven't gotten anything since the Warren Beatty Dick Tracy, and we got a couple comic series about 4 years ago, and it's easy like Batman is, because I'm getting more Batman stuff all the time. I'm always consuming
Yeah.
Batman, so it definitely has. I think it has clearly become the top shelf of my favorite. So I mean, I've got Batman shelves there. I've got Batman prints and things all throughout the house here. So
Yeah. Yeah. Batman's always been my main superhero. The one that got me into it. Probably the first comics I started reading seriously were Batman comics, and then just
same.
kind of expanded from there. So that's cool. So let's see. So what do you think? Where do you think they go from here in the sequel? What do you think is ahead in the Batman world?
So again, we're talking spoilers.
Yeah.
So if you haven't seen the movie and you're trying to avoid stuff, stop right now, because I'm gonna spoil something. But they tease at the end Joker,
Hmm.
um, and I didn't that. If you want to know what I didn't like that.
Yeah.
Um, I would rather them tease someone else. Now I'll be okay with it if Matt follows through with what he's kind of saying that he's doing. The reason that he teased the Joker, and then when he did it, was at that part was when they're having the voiceover basically of saying like, "Hey, the Gotham's going to get worse before it gets better, because people are going. It's in a state of anarchy right now, disarray with everything that's happened, and people are going to look for their opportunity to get what they want." and
Mm.
and it shows shots of Penguin, and so you obviously you have the Riddler that has already existed in this world to show that there are other villains in Arkham. And sure, Joker is Joker. You've got to have Joker up there. And he talks about how there was even a scene where he had shot of, you know, Batman has history with Joker in this movie, and so he's going to
Yeah.
Arkham to try and get some help about the Riddler, of like trying to figure out. He says in an interview, he goes, "I'm not just because you got teased the Joker, we're not going. It doesn't necessarily mean the Joker's going to be the main character in the next movie."
Right.
And if that's the case, I'm really excited because if he needs to be a secondary character in this. Well, he can exist in the world, but let him be a secondary character, maybe develop into it in the third if you really want to bring Joker in. I
Yeah.
think it's set up for, and I mean, this is going to be what a lot of people have talked about. I think it sets up for two kind of sets of characters. I think it sets up this world sets up very well for Court of Owls, which is
Yeah.
why it's trending on Twitter. It's, because obviously in the movie you have Carmine Falcone, who, is basically said he's the mayor for 20 years. Well, and Sal Maroni was doing that before Carmine. It can't just be one person. It's got to be an intricate web of people that are like putting people in position, and I could easily see that the Court of Owls put Sal or put Carmine in position to put other people in position, like,
Mm.
a second tier, third tier of that. It's a dark world, right?
Yeah.
That this Batman is a dark world. That run, that 11 issue series by Scott Snyder in the New 52 is Herald is a great series. It's a really great series.
Yeah.
It's a dark, it's a dark arc. But I think it would fit very well into this world. Um, the other character that I think we'll see, I'm hoping, because of how, not even hoping, but I'm seeing because of how they kind of tease stuff. I'm thinking we're going to get a little bit of Hush in
Yeah.
this, because they literally show the word Hush on a wall at one
Yeah.
point, and the reporter who was investigating Thomas and Martha Wayne, his name was like Edward Elliot.
Elliot. Yeah.
And so if there's, I was talking with Legion of Comics, Mark, on his show on Sunday, we were doing Batman, and we kind of were hitting that point of like, they mentioned the name, the last name's Elliot, and Mark's like, I kind of feel like this could be the Wayne of, where Thomas Elliot is, that was his father, and he has a grudge against the Waynes, and is going to then again, it's another dark storyline that could
Yeah.
go about, and both of those are realistic characters.
Mm.
The Court of Owls are rich people that have masks that are hidden, running the secret society, and Hush is a guy who wants, vengeance and has wrapped up with bandages on his face. Really, like,
Yeah.
it's not like, oh, Clayface or a, Poison Ivy or whatever, trying to get into it. Those characters would fit really well into the universe that Matt Reeves has created. And
Yeah.
I think these drop some Easter eggs to set up for that I could see. If they don't go that route, I'm going to be perfectly okay. I think that's sometimes the issue, though, too. We as fans, we speculate of, oh, I want this to happen. And then when it doesn't happen, we go, well, I don't like that movie because they didn't do what I wanted them to do.
Yeah. I wish I was in control, man. I really do.
Right.
I wish I was
All
calling the
right.
shots, but until that day, I'll have to take what they give me. And so far, the Batman was good. I'm excited to see what more they do with this universe. And the kind of cool thing that we've never had before is HBO Max is going to be filling in some of this in between stuff, which is
Yes.
actually really cool. I mean, for those of you out there who are willing to read other Batman adjacent character comics, this is great because you're going to get about Gotham PD, about the Penguin, about
Yep.
whatever. So that could be really cool. About Arkham. I hear one of the series about Arkham. So
Yeah.
yeah, that brings a cool opportunity that Disney Plus has, Marvel has with Disney Plus, and now the Batman world is going to at least have with
And
HBO
I think
Max.
that's Warner Brothers is being smart with this, at least in my mind. I think what they're doing is they dropped the ball on DC Universe. They tried to do what Marvel did. I still don't. I still like them. I'm
Yeah,
in the minority of, like, I still like a lot of the DC movies, but they dropped the ball. Like, it did not hit what they wanted to hit. I think what they're going to do now is say, and what they're doing by how they're setting stuff up is, I think they're saying we're going to have the Snyderverse with the Aquamans, the Flashpoints, and can tie in the other Batmans and stuff if we want. this Batman that Matt Reeves has created, this is going to be a separate entity. And rather than do a DC universe, we're going to do a Batman universe in the Matt Reeves. Like we're gonna contain the story. We're not going to try and have Batman, who's the most popular character. How does he interact with gods? We're going to say, how does Batman interact with this universe that we're creating? So I think what we're going to have is we're going to have the Marvel, the MCU. You're going to have the DCEU still, and I think you're going to have the Matt Reeves Batman universe because
Yeah.
they've already got the Gotham TV show that Commissioner Gordon is going to be on. They've already said Penguin. I think is the Penguin show is taking place after this movie. The scenes of this movie, I believe, is what they said. So, probably setting up how he probably gets into power and things like that. And I think that's a very smart move by them of let people have the universe that they, because the Snyderverse that people love, some people love, and have that kind of tie in with the Peacemaker show and tie in with whatever, Aquaman and Flashpoint. But let's do this Batman and let's do it the way we want to tell it in a really just diverse universe that we can create and not have to worry about bringing in like, oh, are we going to see Jason Momoa Aquaman or not
Yeah.
in there?
Let this be Earth 1, and let that be Earth
Right.
2, or, just have it
Yes,
simple, like,
exactly.
And DC's always been huge on the multiverse. Like, obviously Marvel has it too, but this is, like, that's their thing. Like, DC's multiverse,
Right.
they've had, how many crises because they get all their multiverses all tangled up, all their different Earths. But yeah, so I think it's a good thing. I'm excited to see it. I definitely want some more DC content. I'm excited for Black Adam. That looks dope. Seeing some of those JSA characters in there is really cool. Would love to see a JSA movie, but we'll see. I don't know if that's even on the slate, but yeah,
It could be with what they're setting up with the Black Adam movie of how they're bringing them in. I think it's kind of like, let's see how these characters, are received.
Yeah, because they could be, DC's Guardians of the Galaxy, where they take characters that
Right.
kind of the general public may not be super familiar with and really run with it, really make something cool. So, yeah, man. Well, I appreciate you coming by and talking Batman with me. I know that we could talk Batman literally all day and all night. So,
I know you're like, oh, it's a 20-minute show. I'm like, nah, bro. If we're talking Batman,
yeah.
you can't have me for 20 minutes. Like, I'm gonna just ramble about Batman because I love it.
Yeah, I feel you. I'm like, no, yeah, there's so many things, especially like I feel like so many of us are still like digesting it and seeing what we think about it and stuff like that. But one last thing about Batman is I am stoked that Chip Zdarsky is coming on to Batman to write Batman ongoing. That is the best news we've had in a while. I can't even read Batman right now, even though Williamson's great. I don't care about this story, so I'm waiting for Zdarsky to come back.
Yeah, as someone who's been collecting all the Batman, trying to get as much of Volume 1, and I have all 2 and all 3 so far. Like, I'm collecting Batman because I'm collecting that one still. But the best Batman stories have all been the minis that have come out, the detective, or Robin and Batman, Jeff Lemire's. So to have the ongoing Batman hasn't hooked me yet of like bringing a story like like we got Hush out of Batman the ongoing series at one point. We've got No Man's Land. So I'm excited that like Zdarsky like bring me something, bring me back, bring that Batman ongoing series back. And if anyone can, it's Chip.
Yeah, totally. He's on fire right now, and so that's going to be some
Yeah.
great comics. A great opportunity for anybody who's not on Batman to get in. I think it's Batman 125 Zdarsky is going to take over as the writer, and trust me, it's going to be fire. So, Bearded, man, I really appreciate you coming on the show. It's really cool to just chat with you. Good to have a friend in the community. A good
Absolutely.
God-fearing, comic-loving man out there doing good stuff. So, love to have you on again anytime. We can talk anytime, man.
Yeah, anytime you need, let me know. Hit me up. I'm there, man.
Oh, do you see what's above my head back here?
Oh, I do. Oh,
Yeah. So,
Ooh.
I got my exclusive Bearded and Mrs. Bearded, The Jump #2. Super cool cover.
Yes.
This was such a dope idea. So I got that up on my shelf to because they are definitely fixtures in the community, and the comic book community is a good one. So, yeah, thank you, Bearded. I appreciate it, brother. A lot of fun, and everybody, morning show is on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 a.m. Central. So come join me and just kick your morning off right, talking about fun stuff, comics. I hope you enjoyed the Bearded Comic Bro, because he is one of the good ones. So, all right, guys, thanks for tuning in. I will check you next time. Please share the video.